All right, so putting, yeah. We're going to talk about putting,
Okay.
specifically those really tricky putts
Tricky putt.
on those sloped greens.
Yeah, those are tough.
Yeah, they can really make or break your score, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And, you've sent in some really interesting sources.
Okay.
One describing a method for using golf ball dimples to adjust your aim,
I love that one.
and another on an app called Puttalyze
Yeah.
that helps with distance control on slopes.
Distance control, yeah.
And
That's a tough one.
yeah, so we're gonna do a deep dive into both of these,
Okay.
and see what we can learn.
It's amazing how both of those sources kind of address these fundamental challenges in putting, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you're right. Slopes can really mess with your aim, your distance control.
yeah, for sure.
It's not just about hitting the ball hard enough.
Right.
It's about understanding the physics involved.
Absolutely. So let's unpack this dimple aiming method first.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like using dimples to aim.
Uh-huh.
But the more I read about it, the more intrigued I became.
I know, me too. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's actually some really elegant geometry behind it.
Oh, okay.
The basic idea is that for every 1% of slope, you adjust your aim by a quarter of a dimple towards the higher side.
Wow. Okay, so a quarter of a dimple.
A quarter of a dimple.
So instead of like pulling out a calculator on the green,
Exactly.
you're just eyeballing the dimples.
Eyeballing it.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's a visual guide that kind of simplifies those tricky calculations.
Right, but how does that actually translate to like
Good question.
degrees and angles? I'm a little bit of a visual learner. So
Okay.
help me wrap my head around this.
So think of it this way.
Okay.
Your putter face makes contact with the ball at a single point.
Right.
Whether you have a neutral putter or one with loft, that contact point might change slightly, but the force of your putt
Always goes through the center of the ball,
Uh-huh.
and that's where the dimple adjustment comes in.
Okay.
You know, a quarter dimple rotation
Mm-hmm.
visually represents the precise angle adjustment you need
Yeah.
based on the slope.
So a quarter dimple shift
Yes.
is basically a shortcut
It is.
to adjusting for the slope.
Right.
Okay, but how do you know how much of an adjustment to make in the first place?
So the source gives a great example.
Okay.
Let's say you have a 2% side hill slope at 5 o'clock.
Okay. 2% side hill at 5 o'clock.
Right. To figure out the baseline slope, the slope that you need to adjust for, you'd need to do some quick math.
Right.
But thankfully, it usually works out to pretty simple fractions of a dimple.
Okay.
In this case, it's a 1% slope along the fall line,
Right.
meaning you adjust your aim by 1/4 of a dimple towards the higher side.
Got it.
So you're basically using the dimples as a visual ruler, aligning them
Right.
to make sure that you're compensating for the slope.
But does that mean that I always need to have a perfectly straight putt?
Well, no, not necessarily.
What if my ball is sitting off to the side a bit?
That's where your understanding of reading greens comes in.
Okay.
The dimple method helps you adjust for the slope. But you still need to consider other factors like the break and speed of the green.
Of course.
You know, it's a tool to refine your aim.
Right.
It's not a magic bullet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's about adding another level of precision to your putting game.
absolutely.
But even if I get the aim perfect,
Okay.
I still need to make sure I hit the ball the right distance,
Yeah, that's important. too.
especially on those tricky slopes.
Right,
And that's where Puttalyze comes in.
exactly. Puttalyze is all about distance control,
Okay.
something that many golfers struggle with, particularly on slopes.
Yeah, for sure.
It aims to take the guesswork out of distance control by using a scientific approach.
Okay. Color me intrigued.
Okay.
Tell me more about this scientific approach.
All right, so the key concept here is corrected length.
Corrected length.
Yeah, imagine you have a putt on a slope.
Okay?
Puttalyze calculates how long that putt would be on a flat surface if you hit it with the same initial velocity needed to reach the hole on the slope.
Wow.
So it's taking into account the slope of the green speed, even your putting style,
Right.
to give you that corrected distance.
So instead of trying to guess how much harder or softer,
Right,
I need to hit the ball because of the slope.
exactly.
I'm getting a precise target distance
You are
based on like physics and data.
based on physics and data. Yeah.
That's wild.
It is. It's like having a personal putting coach in your pocket,
Really?
helping you dial in your distance control.
So how user-friendly is this app?
It's very user-friendly.
Am I going to need an engineering degree to figure it out?
Not at all.
Okay. got
That's
it.
one of the things that impressed me most about Puttalyze is its intuitive design.
Okay.
It's easy to use.
Okay.
It's packed with helpful features. It's got a built-in inclinometer to measure the slope,
Uh-huh.
a practice tool to hone your skills.
Oh, nice.
It even shows you a simulated trajectory of your putt based on your input.
Wow. That sounds incredibly useful,
Yeah.
especially for visualizing how the ball will break on a slope.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can already see how this could be a game changer for my putting.
absolutely.
But I'm curious, do you think there's a risk of becoming too reliant on the app
That's a great question.
and neglecting to develop my own feel for distance control?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah,
Like any tool, it's important to use Puttalyze thoughtfully.
right,
It's not meant to replace your own judgment and feel for the game,
right.
but to complement it.
So it's about finding that balance between using the technology to your advantage,
Yeah.
but still developing your own
Right.
skills and intuition.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do these two methods, dimple-aiming and Puttalyze,
Yeah.
how they work together?
I see them as complementary tools that, when used together,
Yeah.
can significantly improve your putting performance.
Okay,
Dimple-aiming helps you dial in your direction by adjusting for the slope,
right.
while Puttalyze takes care of distance control by giving you that scientifically calculated corrected length.
So it's like having a two-pronged attack.
It is a two-pronged attack.
On those tricky putts,
Yeah.
you're getting both the direction and the distance dialed in,
You got it.
which sounds like a recipe for sinking more putts.
That's the goal.
Absolutely.
And that's what we all want at the end of the day,
Of
right?
course.
See those putts drop and shave strokes off our score?
Yeah, now I'm eager to hear more about how to actually put these methods into practice.
Me too.
What are some specific things our listeners can do to start incorporating dimple-aiming and Puttalyze
Yeah.
into their putting routine?
Yeah, great question.
But before we get into that,
Okay,
let's take a quick pause.
sounds good.
We'll be back in a flash to delve into the practical side of things.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Me too.
All right.
All right.
Welcome back.
Okay, so let's start with dimple-aiming.
Okay.
It all sounds great in theory,
Yeah.
but how can our listener actually put this into practice
Right.
on the green?
Okay.
It still feels a bit abstract to me.
Okay, so the first step is familiarization.
Okay.
Grab a golf ball and find a flat surface.
Okay.
Yeah, your kitchen table will do.
Okay.
Now, practice rotating the ball by a quarter of a dimple.
Right.
It's a lot subtler than you might think.
Right.
This helps build that visual memory.
So it's like getting a feel for the unit of measurement,
Exactly.
like learning how long an inch is before you start measuring a room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So once you're comfortable with that quarter dimple rotation,
Right.
head to the practice green,
Okay.
find a gentle slope,
Okay.
maybe 1 or 2%,
Okay.
and try to recreate that 2% side hill slope at 5 o'clock, example we discussed.
Okay. So I'd aim directly at the hole,
Right.
then adjust by a quarter dimple toward the higher side. What's the best way to visualize that tiny adjustment?
So alignment sticks are your friend here.
Okay.
Use 2 sticks to create a visual guide,
Okay.
one for your initial aim and one for your adjusted aim.
Gotcha.
This gives you a clear reference point as you practice.
Okay.
Then take a few practice strokes,
Okay.
focusing on rolling the ball along that adjusted line.
Okay.
Pay attention to how the ball breaks,
Right.
how that quarter dimple shift impacts the path of your putt.
So it's all about building that muscle memory
Yeah.
and trusting that the dimple adjustment is enough to compensate for the slope.
Exactly. The more you practice, the more natural it will become.
Right.
Now let's move on to Puttalyze.
Okay.
We touched on its features,
Yeah.
but I'm really interested in how our listener can get the most out of this app,
Right.
both during practice and on the course.
Yeah, I'm picturing myself on the course phone in hand trying to figure out the app.
Right.
All my playing partners are getting impatient.
I know. Yeah, you don't want to hold everybody up.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's where the practice green comes in.
Right.
One drill I recommend is setting up putts of varying lengths and slopes.
Okay.
Use the app's inclinometer to measure the slope of each putt.
Gotcha.
Then input that data along with the green speed,
Okay.
and the app will give you the corrected length.
So basically, I'm practicing putting on a flat green,
Uh-huh.
but with the added challenge of factoring in the slope,
Exactly.
all thanks to the app.
That's right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it lets you isolate the impact of the slope,
Right.
which is crucial for improving your distance control.
Right.
And remember, the app also shows you a simulated trajectory,
Right.
so you can visualize the break as well.
So by the time I'm on the course, I'll be a Puttalyze pro, confidently inputting data
Yeah.
and syncing those tricky putts.
I love it.
But let's be real.
Yeah.
Are there any potential downsides or challenges with these methods
Of course.
that our listeners should be aware of?
There always are.
Yeah.
So firstly, don't expect miracles overnight. It takes time and practice to integrate these techniques into your game.
Yeah.
And secondly, It's important to use them as part of a holistic approach,
Okay.
not as replacements for reading the green and using your judgment.
Right. Yeah, I could see myself getting so focused on the dimples or the app
Yeah.
that I forget to consider things like
Right.
wind or grain.
Winning, grain, yeah, all
Yeah.
those other factors.
Yeah.
So these methods enhance your decision-making.
Right?
They don't replace it.
Okay.
Experience and good judgment still play a crucial role.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And on that note, let's talk about some common mistakes golfers make
Yeah.
when implementing these techniques.
Okay. I'm
Agree.
all ears. I'm sure I'll be making all of them at some point.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah.
So with dimple aiming,
Okay.
the most common mistake is over-rotating the ball.
Okay.
Remember, the adjustments are subtle.
Right.
Trust the quarter dimple increment
Okay.
and resist the urge to overcompensate.
Don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it.
Also, don't neglect the other fundamentals of putting,
Right.
like a smooth stroke and solid follow-through.
So it's not just about aiming with the dimples.
Right.
It's about executing the entire putt effectively.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Now, with Puttalyze,
Okay.
the biggest pitfall is relying on it too heavily
Right.
and not developing your own feel for distance.
Of course.
Remember, it's a tool to guide you,
Right.
not
Yeah.
to dictate every putt.
Yeah. I wouldn't want my putting game to fall apart if my phone battery died
Exactly.
on the 16th hole.
You got to be able to play without it, too.
Right.
What else? Another common mistake is not calibrating the app correctly.
Okay.
Make sure you're entering the correct green speed and slope readings.
Right.
Inaccurate data will lead to inaccurate results.
So garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's all about using the app thoughtfully and critically.
This is all incredibly helpful.
Good. I'm glad.
I'm feeling much more confident about putting these techniques into practice.
Yeah. But where can our listener go for more information or resources on dimple-aiming and Puttalyze?
Well, for dimple aiming,
Yeah.
I highly recommend seeking out the original source material we mentioned.
Okay.
It provides a detailed breakdown of the geometry,
Right.
some great visual aids.
Okay.
For Puttalyze, their website has a wealth of tutorials and videos
Okay.
that walk you through all the app's features.
And of course, don't underestimate the power of observation.
Oh, that's huge.
Watch how the pros approach putting on slopes.
Yeah.
Pay attention to their setup, their alignment, and how they factor in the slope when reading the green.
Observation is a fantastic way to learn.
Absolutely.
You can pick up so many nuances and strategies
Yeah.
just by watching skilled golfers.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question.
I like where this is going. Go ahead.
We've covered these great tools and techniques,
We have.
but the real key is putting them into action, right?
Absolutely.
So the question is, how will you commit to practicing and honing these skills
Right.
to truly elevate your putting game?
Yeah.
Will you make it a priority to practice dimple aiming on the practice screen?
Good question.
Will you dedicate time to experimenting with Puttalyze
Yeah.
and really understanding its nuances?
Those are excellent questions.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand the theory,
Right.
but it's the dedication to practice
Right.
and the willingness to embrace the learning process that will truly make the difference on the greens.
That's a perfect note to end on. Now it's time to grab your putter.
All right, let's go.
Head to the course and start sinking those putts. Wow. It's amazing how much there is to learn about
God,
something as seemingly simple as putting.
You would think it's so straightforward.
You really would.
Yeah.
We've talked about dimple aiming for direction,
Right.
Puttalyze for distance, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore, and that's kind of the beauty of golf,
Yep.
isn't it? There's always room for improvement,
For sure.
refining your technique,
Yeah.
gaining that extra edge.
Absolutely. So for those listening who are eager to kind of dive deeper into these methods,
Okay.
what are some additional resources or next steps you'd recommend?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the original source material on dimple aiming
Okay.
is a great place to start.
Yeah.
It goes into the details of the geometry,
Uh-huh.
provides visual aids that can really help you grasp the concept.
Right. And for Puttalyze,
Yeah,
their website is a goldmine of information.
it is.
They have tutorials, videos,
Yeah.
and even case studies that show how golfers of all skill levels
Right.
have used the app to improve their putting.
That's right. And don't underestimate the power of watching other golfers either.
Oh, that's right.
Head to your local course or watch professional tournaments
Yeah.
and just pay attention to how experienced players approach putting on slopes.
Yeah. What are they doing?
Yeah, notice their setup,
Okay.
their alignment, how they factor in the slope when reading the green.
Right. It's like having a free putting clinic.
It is.
right in front of you.
You're getting a free lesson.
You really are. You can pick up so many subtle nuances
Absolutely.
and strategies just by observing those who have mastered the craft.
I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, for sure. And don't be afraid to experiment on the practice screen.
Oh, yeah.
Try out Dimple-Aiming, play around with Puttalyze,
Right.
and see what works best for you.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Yeah, because putting is such a personal aspect of the game.
It is.
And what works for one golfer might not work for another.
Very true. And ultimately, it's about enjoying the process,
Yeah.
the journey of continual improvement,
Mm-hmm.
the satisfaction of seeing your hard work pay off on the course.
I love that. Couldn't agree more. Golf is a game of patience, perseverance, and constant learning.
It is.
And I think that's what makes it so rewarding.
Absolutely.
Well said. So, to wrap up our deep dive into the world of putting on sloped greens, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. We've given you the tools,
Oh, yeah.
the techniques, and the inspiration, but now it's up to you to take action.
That's right.
Go out there, practice, experiment, and watch your putting game reach new heights.
And most importantly, have fun along the way.
Until next time, happy putting.